All right. In addition to my professional responsibilities, I think it's important to note that I am also a mom to two-year-olds. So today's topic is very near and dear to my heart. I will say nothing is more humbling as a parenting researcher and clinical child psychologist than having twins and realizing no matter how much you know and what research suggests, there's only so much that's actually in your control and things can be changed. So many of the things we'll be talking about today are things that I have to implement on a regular basis and sometimes with good success and sometimes not as much. Um, so why are we talking about transitions? It's important to recognize that change is difficult for everyone. And we know that young children, and when I say young children, I'm really thinking about toddlers, preschoolers, so that like 2 to 5, 2 to 6 age range. And during this developmental period, the young children often have a hard time with transitions and changes that happen, partially because they don't have a concept of time. So I want you to think what it would be like if you were going through your day-to-day activities, but didn't have any idea what was going to happen next. You don't have a watch, you don't have a calendar, you don't have your phone with notifications telling you what's going on in your schedule for that day. That would be pretty challenging, right? It might be anxiety provoking, it might be frustrating, and if all of a sudden someone's saying like, hey, you need to do this right now. And that's exactly what it's like for our young children. They don't know when they're going to have to switch from one activity to another. But children and families experience these types of transitions all the time, every day. And oftentimes when we see, young children getting upset during transitions, it's often because they're switching from an activity sooner than they want, or because they're being asked to go from a preferred activity to one that might be less enjoyable. This results in often resistance, sometimes, meltdowns or, just oppositionality with the firm no and not wanting to do it or ignoring you. And this can really be regardless of if the transition is small, like going from napping to needing to get your diaper change, to big transitions like starting preschool, welcoming a new sibling. Whatever the size of the transition, we know that young children need caring adults to help support them through it. And the reason why I'm using caring adults there is while I'm focusing on things that parents can do today, these strategies are useful for other caregivers, be they grandparents, but also teachers, so daycare teachers, preschool teachers. These are not unique to the home environment by any means. I also think it's important for us to start off kind of with this discussion around the fact that young children really have little control of their lives, right? They're not choosing their own schedule, which makes sense, but they also often aren't even having choices in what they're doing, where they're going, when it's happening. And that can be really frustrating for them, particularly if they're being asked to stop doing something they're enjoying. And so one of the things we want to focus on is identifying daily transitions that might be predictable and that occur in a familiar sequence. This could be things like if your child really doesn't like putting shoes on, but we always have to put shoes on before heading outside, or your child really doesn't like getting their diaper changed, but you always do that after nap time or before bedtime. Think about and identifying where you might have these problematic transitions and then being able to implement some of the strategies we're going to talk about today proactively. We know that learning how to manage change requires this preparation, but also the development of skills and being able to practice using these. As your children develop skills to experience and master daily transitions, they're going to be better prepared to cope with bigger changes that might occur in your life. I do think it's important to also note that some children adapt much more easily to change and transitions. Other children are going to need substantially more support from adults. How young children express their emotions and behaviors will vary based off of their temperament as well as their age. Extra help is important, particularly for children with disabilities or developmental delays who may have challenges communicating their emotions or processing change, or having difficulty managing multiple steps in their brain due to the nature of their disability or developmental delay. When young children receive responsive caregiving from the adults in their life, they learn to trust them and can gain emotional security over time, which can help reduce kind of the reactions that young kids express, whether they be to transitions big or small. Over time, this is going to help them be much more receptive and able to go with the flow when transitions or changes do occur. Remember, when children are having challenging behaviors, while it can be really frustrating, it's often a way that young children are communicating to us that, something is wrong or this is upsetting for them, and they might just not have the language or the ability to express that. And so our hope today is to be able to cover several different tips for helping young children with transitions. I'm going to go over 4 main tips, and I'll be talking through some additional details and examples related to these 4 tips. I'll also be talking about some different strategies at the end today that you can implement, and finally sharing resources at the end. If you do have questions that come up while I'm talking, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I'm going to be leaving time for questions at the end as well. All right, so the first of the tip we're going to talk about is the importance of establishing routines and maintaining consistency as much as possible. Familiar routines around daily transitions help teach children what to expect, which can help boost their self-confidence. When children know what to expect, it's easier for them to practice regulating their emotions and their behaviors. This can be transitions like morning routines or the bedtime routine, or getting ready to leave the house to go to daycare. We know that these routines and transitions have many steps that young children don't have the working memory abilities to hold in their brain and carry out. Most of the time, young children are only able to keep 1 or 2 pieces of information in their mind, whereas these routines often have 4, 5, 6, or even more steps. And so when we have regular routines and adults are able to provide support for these more everyday transitions, it can really help then when children are experiencing big transitions and make them more adaptable and easier to adjust to change, particularly when there's already these regular routines established and put in place. Given that children have such little control in their lives, one of the things that can be really helpful is having your child involved in the process of establishing these routines for regular transitions. And they also could be for less regular transitions. So if we're thinking about goodbye, when you're dropping them off at school, thinking about, all right, so when I drop you off at daycare today, we're going to put your stuff away. I'm going to give you a hug. We'll do an ugga-mugga or whatever special for you and your child, but you're preparing them for that. They know that you're consistently doing that, and that might help reduce the meltdowns or the clinging that might happen at drop-off. It could also be, though, for more one-off transitions. A common one is transitioning from the crib to a toddler bed. If you can have your child help pick out the sheets or pillowcases or which stuffed animals they want to have be their bed stuffed animals, that can help them kind of feel like they're having some control over this new anxiety-provoking situation and help reduce some of the emotions they might otherwise experience. When change from your regular routines does need to happen, which always is the case for some of us from time to time. This could be that all of a sudden your child's sick and so their daily routine looks different, or they have to unexpectedly go to the doctors. Trying to give advance notice and prepare them for this change as much as possible is our second tip, actually. And so that brings us to this idea of giving advance warning. And this is true both for those unexpected, but also, daily changes. So if we're thinking about transitioning toddlers between activities, this can be really tricky if we're just springing it on them and don't give them any advance warning to prepare them for what's to come. So by using verbal or nonverbal cues to prepare them for the transition, something like, 5 more minutes until we need to clean up for snack, or 10 minutes and then we're going to turn off the lights. Even though young children can't tell time, by giving them these cues and helping kind of make them aware that this transition is coming up, it prepares them for this, especially if you're doing more than one of these kind of cues. I typically recommend giving a 10, a 5, and then either a 2 or 1 minute warning to help prepare for the transition. So that way they kind of are getting this sense of the countdown. And that actually does help build their time awareness with time and practice. When possible, it can be really helpful to also mention something that the child might have to look forward to during the next thing that they're doing. This is especially true like if they're playing or doing something that they really enjoy right now. So for example, if it's time to clean up and get ready to go to school in the morning, you might say like, are you going to go swing on the playground today at school? Or ask about something that they really enjoy or might be excited about at school to help with that transition. Or what friend do you want to play with today? Which activity do you want to do during choice time? By doing this, it can help kind of get them excited about something, even if they're not super pumped to be going to school or want to stay there, because they're holding on to and excited about that one thing. One of the other strategies that's really easy to implement, but can be really helpful in removing some of this burden from you as a parent related to giving reminders and keeping track of time, is to use a visual timer or egg timer. You could also do this with like visual alarms. There's a lot of YouTube videos for like 5-minute, 10-minute alarms that have cute graphics and music even. But this is a way to remove some of your child's anger or annoyance at you, because instead it's about the timer. And so you're setting it. You can see it here on the screen. An example, this is a cute one that has a rainbow, but it allows them to visualize and see the time. And as it's tracking down, they know they have less time. And it can help if like you're going to be preparing dinner and it might be hard for you to remember to give that 5-minute or that 2-minute warning. At least they have that visualization that they can be checking and seeing roughly how much time they have left. Again, young children don't really have a great sense of time. So the difference between 1 versus 2 minutes, they don't really know what that means. All right, I'm checking because I see. Oh. Yeah, so I am going to try to answer this now. There was a question in the Q&A around what to do when your child asks about past events. You had to think like injuries or struggles he's having. One of my twins does this all the time with like, if her sister hit her or pushed her, she'll say that happened and keep talking about it even 2-3 days later, or if they have a boo-boo that they still had it. And that's where like it is hard validating like, yes, you got a boo-boo. That was yesterday. It's already getting better. Or like trying to help just kind of think about like, each day boo-boos get better, or, today's a new day. Let's not focus on the struggles of the past. But that is something that some children just tend to have more of a tendency to hold on to. And you don't want to ignore or invalidate that experience. So recognizing and repeating back what they're saying, validating it, but also not giving too much time or attention, or helping redirect more to things to look forward to. And so with like injuries, or if, a kid at school is mean to them, helping them think about like, it's already better, what can we do, or who can we play with today that we enjoy playing with that might not be as mean, can be one of those ways to help. All right. So the third tip we're going to talk about today is this idea of using some sort of transition activity or object to make it more fun, or kind of help reduce some of the negative emotions that might come with transitions. Sometimes having a fun song, this is like the idea of the cleanup song that's been used for decades. We know that that can help capture young children's attention, help them mentally prepare for the change, and signal that it's time to move on. A lot of music also has a soothing effect on the brain, so it can kind of help with that self-regulation that young children are still building up their capacity for. In terms of transition activities, depending on the child, that might be more helpful. This could be something like, all right, we're going to skip to the car, or I often do like, do you want to march up the hill or waddle up the hill? Because where my girls' daycare is up a little bit of a hill, and so they get to decide how they want to go in. Sometimes it might be like, all right, we're going to count to 10 and then we're going to do this, or we're going to take 3 deep breaths, belly breaths, whatever you use with your child. And so this can just be a nice way to have some sort of like closure to what you were doing, get them mentally prepared before they go on to the next activity. When we think about transition objects, these are particularly helpful when transitioning from one location to another, such as going from home to school, or if they're going to a family member's house. And all I mean by a transition object is a special toy, blanket, stuffed animal, something to help kind of ease that transition. And this could be, going from nap time in the room to going to the car, or going from daycare or to home, or home to daycare. We know some kids are totally happy just to leave and don't need some. Others really need to have that security object, or they feel like they need to take something with them for the road, and that can help ease the transition. For my girls right now, we do a lot of like, you got to pick one of your stuffies or one of your toys to bring with you into the car, and then we have them leave it in the car rather than bringing it to daycare, but that helps with getting them into the car. Or same thing, like picking which of their babies they want to bring with them to bed. Or if we're at a park or playing outside, we've done a lot recently with it being fall of having them like pick leaves or acorns or pine cones that they can bring with them and use for art projects. And so that's been something that's really nice on weekends. If we're out at the playground and they don't want to leave to go home for lunch and nap time, we'll say like, why don't we pick some leaves? And then after nap time, we'll make a picture with them. And so that can be a way for them to feel like they have something from this fun time at the park and help with that transition. One of the other things that I think is really helpful to think about, particularly if you have a child with a disability, neurodevelopmental disorder, is whether you can build in either a sensory break or proactively know that they can go to a calming corner during a transition. So sensory breaks can be, any sort of sensory activity, fidget toys, thinking putty, standing on a balance board, that might just help get some of that extra energy wiggles out, or help kind of think through that regulation before they move to the next activity. Calming corners, as you see here, are just a place that young children, or really you can even use these with older children, but that they can go to calm down and regulate their emotions during transitions. As you can see in these pictures, some ideas for things to include in calming corners are some sort of soft seating, either a beanbag chair or a floor pillow, a cushion. It can be the mini couches, mini chairs that kids can sit on or even lie down on. Some favorite items like books or stuffed animals, quiet toys that they can play with. You can have some of those sensory objects like sensory bottles or poppets that can help keep them focused while they're decompressing and helping regulate. For older toddlers or preschoolers, you can use communication tools such as charts or letters or choice boards. That can be a way to help them kind of communicate their needs if that's something that's hard for them to do, particularly during transitions or when upset. You can also use some of those visual timers or sand timers in these corners to kind of give a sense of like, All right, we can have 5 minutes to calm down, transition between activities. They can see that and know how much time they have. And it's a way to ensure that they're not spending an exorbitant amount of time, on the sensory break or in the calming corner, kind of derailing your routine and making you late for whatever you're trying to do next. The final tip that I want to touch on before we talk about some specific strategies, just this idea of validating feelings. That sounds so simple and obvious, but acknowledging what your child is feeling in the moment can be really helpful for them because again, there's so much uncertainty and feeling like they don't have control. So just labeling what they're feeling, one easy way of doing this is simply repeating back what you hear them say. If your toddler's saying that they're mad, that they're having to clean up their toys, you could say, "You're mad that you have to clean up now." Or you can say, like, "You really enjoy playing with your toys. I know it's hard when we have to stop doing things we enjoy." One of the things that's really important to consider is if you know that your child is tired, hungry, sick, acknowledging kind of where they're at, how they're feeling can kind of take some of that frustration we as parents often experience and make you kind of recognize, okay, like they're getting overly tired now, we're getting towards bedtime, and make it a little bit more pleasant because you're recognizing why this is so challenging for your child. A big part of parenting is that your own self-care and your own self-regulation. And if you're tired or if you're hungry, or it's just been a really stressful week, you're going to be a lot less likely to be patient and want to stick to these routines and jump to it. I catch myself doing that sometimes, especially if we're trying to get out the door and we're late. And I'll touch on that in a moment, actually, around the importance of trying to leave extra time when possible. Before I do that, I just want to kind of really hit home a point I mentioned earlier, which is trying to give opportunities for choices whenever possible, because that can really help reduce resistance to transitions and help children manage their feelings. What I recommend with young children is using what's called forced choices. This is simply a parenting technique that involves giving children a limited set of acceptable options to choose from that helps them feel empowered and in control and helps them learn to make decisions. And also kind of deal with disappointment or mistakes that sometimes we choose something that isn't actually what we wanted, but we have more choices in the future. We can't let children make all the decisions, nor should we, but providing them with simple choices throughout the day can give them a sense of autonomy, and transitions are often perfect times for these forced choice questions. So what do I mean by this? Instead of just asking your toddler, for example, like, would you like to use the potty? We're doing potty training in my house right now, so there's gonna be some potty examples. You know, if you say, would you like to use the potty? It's really easy for them to say no, right? Because that's a yes, no question and it's appealing and easy. And toddlers, particularly 2, 3-year-olds, love saying no. But if you change that and ask instead, would you like to read your Daniel Tiger potty book or your Elmo potty book? Or it doesn't even have to be about potty books, but certain books. That way, you're giving them some control over what they're doing while they're on the potty. So you're not giving the choice about whether they go to the potty. You're saying they have to go to the potty, but you're giving them something fun and exciting that they like while going to the potty. Another example that this is commonly used, as you see in the picture, is with getting dressed. Would you like to wear the yellow or pink shirt today? Again, you're not letting them pick whatever they want or going through the closet, but having reasonable choices, letting them have some decision over it. Socks or shoes are a really easy one to do this with as well. Toddlers in particular do best with only 2 choices, which is why I've been using those in these examples. And generally, we want to avoid those yes/no questions altogether. For preschoolers, you can often give maybe like 3 choices depending on the situation, but we don't want to have so many choices because that can become overwhelming and then they get upset about having to make the choice. Sometimes the questions that you ask could also be about whether you want to give them independence. So if you know your child is working on a new skill, be it dressing themselves, tying their shoe, you could say, would you like to put on your coat by yourself, or would you like me to help? Or do you want to try to tie your shoe, or would you like me to do it? And that way, you're really giving them this forced choice on something that needs to happen. And it's not about whether it happens, but it's how it happens. And this is really important because you need to make sure whenever you give forced choices that you're comfortable with whatever choice your child ends up making. And so you shouldn't offer a choice that then, could add stress or make you late. I will also note, because while this strategy works really well most of the time, if your child really can't make a choice, and I typically do, like, I'll ask 3 times if it's been a couple minutes, you can just decide and make the decision for them. And if you're regularly giving choices, they know that they'll have more opportunities. So there's a comment about, when it comes to choices, we practice this at home and often get from their 3-year-old, I don't want choices, and pout. Yeah. And so every child's going to be different. I think one of the ways that I would respond to that is like, well, it depends, because that's still a choice. I would probably say, like, well, which one do you want? And see if they choose something that's not from it, you could try to provide the explanation. Especially gifted children often really want to have more of that control and autonomy, or think they know what's best. So I sometimes will actually say that, of like, my job as your parent is to help keep you safe, or to help you know what things are okay. And that's really hard, or that's overwhelming. And so I give you choices. Sometimes it's the actual saying it. We're going to be transitioning to talking about visual schedules in a minute. And so that's been a nice way. I've seen a couple different ways this can be done that we'll talk about, is like, if you have the ability, like, depending on the room, the setup, you could lay them out on the bed. And so you're not actually saying, like, which of these do you want, but you could say, like, all right, go pick out your clothes from what's on the bed. And it's not you verbalizing it, or, the Montessori style hangers, where there's like, here's one of 5 things, and they can just pick whatever they want from that mini closet. Or you can do that. We do it with like a just coat hook that's lower down in the back of their closet door, and we'll put them there. And then they can pick which one they want. And so rather than needing to be the one verbally giving choices, you're still giving choices, but you're not prompting it. And if they have the visual schedule, which we'll talk about in a second, they know that they have to do that activity or make that choice in that order, and they're getting reinforced for doing that. And so if after we talk about the visual schedules, you feel like that still wouldn't work, we can come back to that. But those are 2 things. And I would maybe use like the visual as the go-to, but sometimes if they're really digging in, giving that explanation around, like, well, here's why I'm giving choices, or here's why we're doing this, can be helpful. Okay. One of the things that probably everybody here knows or has experienced, but I still think is good for us to keep in our mind, is that we want to try to be proactive about leaving enough time. That was something I learned very early on as a new parent, is like, things that used to take me 15 minutes, I now need to leave 45 minutes for. And sometimes I end up early, and sometimes I still feel like I'm rushing. But the reason why this is so critical is that children pick up on our negative energy. And when we're feeling rushed, they can end up becoming more frustrated. And so by trying to avoid leaving things for the last minute, not only are we helping make that transition smoother, but hopefully we're also getting there a little bit earlier. We're giving our child more time to address and prepare them for the next thing. And overall, having that extra time is going to help you be calmer, which is going to then help your children stay calm. I recognize that, especially, if you have 4 or 5 different kids all doing different things, you're getting ready at different times, like time slips away, or you focus your attention on one thing and then one of the kids ends up getting missed. And so that's where we're going to move to talking about 2 different behavioral strategies and ways to try to help automate some of this with your child over time. The first of these is going to be using visual schedules. Visual schedules are a great way to help establish routines and prepare children for what's to come next. Consistency is especially important for young children, as well as children with disabilities or developmental delays. We also know that visual schedules can be really helpful for dual language learners because sometimes they struggle with relying just on language cues alone. And so when we talk about visual schedules, we're simply talking about any visual representation of your child's activities or what's expected of them, for that routine or maybe throughout the whole day. And while they come in many different forms, and I have lots of different examples over the next couple of slides, they typically, you'll notice, consist of pictures, drawings, and maybe some words to help indicate to the child what is expected of them for each task. And you can start using these visual schedules even with 2-year-olds. You might need to be providing more support when kids are 2, 3, but the goal is that by establishing this routine, helping them know what they're to do, over time, they're going to move to being able to do this on their own and eventually not need the visual schedule. But the goal of these visual schedules is simply to help them understand what is expected of them so they can more easily navigate their day. This can help make tasks more predictable, which increases comfort and also helps with their ability to actually successfully complete these tasks. Here you see 2 really basic examples of morning routine visual schedules. These ones, you can create in Word or on Google Docs, then print it out and then post it in your child's room, or maybe having one in the kitchen as well. So they're clear visual reminders of what they need to do rather than you needing to be the one to remind them of each step of the way. For some children, just having this in order makes sense. They can follow this, and that is adequate. For other children, the visuals are not enough, and they need to have something more interactive, or actually, like the order that you see on the left here would be too confusing for them because they wouldn't be able to remember, like, well, did I go to the potty and wash my hands already? And so there are boards. This is an example of a Melissa and Doug one that's a wooden routine chart. And you can see here that it allows the child to flip up each of the animals as the task is complete, and then they see the check mark and the star. These don't have to be ones that you purchase. These can be ones that you make. I'll show some examples of versions that are laminated or that you use on chalkboards, dry erase boards. But the idea here is that not only are they visually able to see, is this complete, but they also get that reward of moving the item or getting the star, getting the checklist, crossing off the item, whatever it might be. This is another example. This is the Look Lola magnetic daily visual schedule for kids. This is something that you can get on Amazon. There's lots of ones like this, but this allows you to kind of customize and create. So the different squares that you see are on here, they have a bunch of different cards. And so you can pick which of the cards go on your child's board and in what order. And then all the stars are on there, but those are also magnets. And so they're putting the star as they complete each task in their morning routine. The problems I will say with a lot of the ones that you buy, not only do they cost money, but they have limitations in terms of how much they can actually be customized to each child. And so many of the families that I work with will instead make their own. And so again, you can make your own chart, you can laminate it. I've even had people just use like packing tape over where the check marks would go, because the rest of it doesn't need to actually have. And so with the packing tape, that way they can use a dry erase marker on it and erase it each time. And even if you have to, every couple weeks, print a new one, that can still work. Although if you're able to laminate, or you can see on the right here, this is just a dry erase board that has some of these you can buy on Etsy. Other people, if you have like a Cricut or those machines that you can print out your own vinyls, will sometimes get creative and make their own. You can use like chalkboards where you physically write it in with either a chalk marker or even a permanent marker, and then they're able to use chalk or magnets on it to mark off things when they're there. So there's no one right way to do this. Another way that's not actually as much of a single schedule or list is some people will do what are called routine cards. You can see those here in the binder ring. These are really common for people who follow Montessori techniques. There's a mom, it's the Montessori in Real Life. It's a blog. And this mom talks about how she used these routine cards with her toddlers. And she actually created 3 different sets of these routine cards, one for getting ready to go outside or on an outing, one for getting ready for nap time, and one for setting up for mealtime. And so one of the things that's important whenever doing a visual schedule or routine cards is that you want to walk your child through it, the first couple times, or she talks about on her blog how she kind of goes through it almost like a book. And then when it's time to actually go through the steps and the transitions, they take the cards with them. You might need to help them early on in terms of completing the steps and flipping them one by one at a time, or same thing, putting the star or the check mark next to the items as they're doing it. I really love how she uses these binder rings because it also allows you to make changes. That's similarly with the ones that you can purchase on Amazon that have extra things. If what your child's doing, maybe, when they're in daycare, there's different steps than when they move to preschool because maybe they're not needing to pack their lunch anymore, or they're starting to have to pack their lunch. Oftentimes you can add or change out what it is versus if you're pre-purchasing a set one, you might not have as much ability to change it over time. But again, the goal is not for your child to have to use these forever. And regardless of which approach or technique you use with a visual schedule, the goal for these schedules is that your child should be able to easily answer these 4 questions when they reference the visual schedule. What am I doing right now? How do I know if I'm making progress in the routine? How do I know when I'm done with the routine? What comes next in the routine, or what do I do after the routine? And we know that those interactive visual schedules where they're physically marking off or moving something each time they complete a task can be more helpful in answering those questions, keeping track of the order. But again, that's not needed for all children. And so it might just take some experimenting with your child to see what's most effective. The next behavioral strategy that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about it briefly today. I have another webinar that I'm doing as a follow-up for this one in March that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But is this idea of using behavioral charts. And these can be really powerful, especially for children who struggle extensively with transitions, or children with behavioral concerns or developmental disabilities that can make, again, remembering these steps extra challenging, or they might not have as much motivation or self-regulation skills that are needed to be able to complete what's asked of them each day. And so just to make sure we're all on the same page, I want to start by talking about what behavior charts are. These are simply a visual tool to help families track and improve a child's behavior. They're really helpful when children are learning new skills or working on building new routines, and overall can really help your child feel good about themselves as they're working on these new things, rather than it being frustrating for everyone involved. Behavior charts can be used with children anywhere between 2 to 12 years, but I generally find them to be most effective in that 3 to 8 age range. A lot of times as kids get older, you might need to move more to like a point system or something a little bit different in terms of more earning privileges, access to time, rather than it being about a physical sticker chart or behavior chart. I will say, however, I want to note that within that 3 to 8 age range, kids on the younger end, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, don't always fully understand the concept of working towards a reward, especially a reward in the future, because they don't have a good sense of time. And so today I'm going to be focusing more on just basic sticker charts or chore charts that can be used with toddlers and preschoolers under the age of 5. Where the focus is more about giving that praise, that reinforcement in the moment, and less about working towards earning something with these behavior charts. That said, I will show some different examples. So Again, the focus of these behavior charts are for the young children to get that instant positive feedback. Sometimes that's with a sticker or a check mark that they're putting right on the chart. But that should also ideally be complemented or paired with, praise, excitement, a high five from the caregiver, because that is extremely rewarding for young children. And that's what helps motivate them to keep doing those behaviors. It also helps them with learning accountability. Most young children don't need to earn a reward or a treat or something to reinforce their behavior. That one-on-one attention, excitement, happiness from you as the caregiver is often rewarding enough. That said, you can, and there's nothing wrong with using rewards as part of behavior chart. So the one you see here on the left with the dinosaur, they're still getting the reinforcement each step of the way as they're filling in the chart, but maybe they get to pick a special reward at the end still that they're able to have. Whenever you do give rewards, one of the things that's really important to keep in mind is that it needs to be something your child is excited about. And that can be hard because something that is exciting to them one day might not be the next day. And if it's taking them a week or a month to get through the chart, that reward might not actually be reinforcing by the time they get to it. I hate using the word chores, but I like this visual example. And as you'll see, for young children, when we talk about chores, a lot of times it's more like, what are the basic things that are expected of them each day? And so picking up their toys when they're done with them, how you define making your bed might depend. Like right now with my 2-year-olds, it's literally like, let's make sure that our bed babies and blankets and pillows are in our bed. We don't make the beds. And that's just what we accept. Some people want to work on actually nicely straightening out the sheets, whatever it is for you or what the chores are. This can just be a nice way, again, to teach your child responsibility, help build that self-confidence, and again, remove some of that, like instead of you having to nag them all the time on doing the things that you expect them to do, you're kind of making it more positive and allowing them to be reinforced. It's also a way for them to, again, visually check in and see where they're at, which teaches independence and accountability. Potty training is a great time to use these. There's lots of ones that you can print out online. This is a way, you can do it just about actually physically going on the potty, or as you can see in the example in the top left, you can break it down to the multiple different steps or things that are involved with the transition from diapers to using a toilet. And so this might be like, first saying that they need to use the potty, or being able to pull down their pants by themselves, actually sitting on the potty, actually going and using the potty, wiping themselves independently, washing their hands afterwards. We think about all the things that are involved with toilet training, that can be a lot and really hard. And so breaking that down visually might work. Or the one that's on the bottom right is actually one that I used with one of my twins, where we were able over time, and as she was working towards potty training, that like early on, we would give her a sticker just for telling us that she had to go potty, just sitting on the potty, even if she wasn't successful with going. And then as she became more comfortable, we were able to then switch to when she actually went. Or we've been working now on her being able to independently wipe because she often wants us to do it. And so where you're giving the sticker for or what it is. And in our case, we had been thinking like, oh, when she fills up the chart, we'll do some sort of reward. She couldn't have cared less that she filled up the chart. She's so excited about getting to pick out which sticker she gets to put on the chart and choosing where on the chart it goes that she didn't even notice when she filled it up. You can see actually that there's an extra sticker that she put at the end before we got to the next chart. And so one of the things that's nice when we think about these different things is a lot of times parents get so worried about like, well, if I'm always giving a reward or if they feel like they need to earn something, like they won't be intrinsically motivated. Well, a lot of the things that young children are doing, potty training being a huge milestone of that, they're all going to achieve it eventually. And so you don't have to worry so much about this, intrinsic motivation for the behavior. They are going to eventually learn it. And this could be especially important to use for kids who maybe had a negative experience with potty training or feel like they really need support with being able to successfully do this. And so again, there's no one size fits all. Really tailoring it to what your child's needs are is important. And this really kind of is my big takeaway related to behavior charts is we don't want to use behavior charts for every single behavior, or every single transition, or every single thing that your child's learning. That would be too much for you. That would be overwhelming for them. We want to focus on encouraging positive behaviors for one behavior or one transition or one thing that we're working on. And we want to be strategic about what that is because we don't, again, want children to constantly expect a reward for everything they do, which can then make it harder to motivate them in the long run if they're no longer being rewarded. And so by focusing on the things that we know are particularly hard for them, maybe it's sharing, maybe it's following directions within 2 requests, and targeting those behaviors, or if it's a particularly challenging transition, like getting to the car and to school, using it for that and reinforcing that thing that you know is challenging for them. And you can even talk to your young child about it that way of like, I know it's really hard for us to get out the door in the morning. And so to help make that easier and really focus on it, and you might have then with the chart, with the visual schedule, something that's there. And as you know, it might be that you use a visual schedule and when they complete all the steps, they get that sticker or they get to pick something related to you. You can use these 2 together, or as you saw with the potty chart here, like the different steps of the almost visual schedule are on the left, and then they're able to earn the stickers for each step of the way. The other thing that's really important when using these visual schedules, when using behavior charts, is that they need to be readily accessible and posted in a place in your house where your child is going to easily see them. So, you know, if you're working on saying please and thank you, maybe you keep the chart in the refrigerator or somewhere in the kitchen where they're going to regularly see it. Or if you're working on sharing toys, probably having it in your living room or play area or wherever they are more likely to be playing with their toys is a good location for it. So there, again, there's no one size fits all for it. Morning routines, probably in their bedroom or in their bathroom, depending on where it is. And you want to work towards slowly phasing out these charts and visual schedules as they're mastering those transitions, routines, or specific behavior. All right, so before I open it up for questions, I just want to share a couple resources with you to continue building on what we've discussed so far today. First, I already mentioned the follow-up to this webinar that's going to be happening in March. This will discuss tips for implementing those sticker behavior charts in more detail and kind of talk about developmental considerations, how to problem solve through common issues that arise, and similarly, some other behavioral techniques, things like time out or time in, thinking about how to use them effectively to manage problematic behaviors. If you're interested in attending this or think you may be interested, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen now. We will be also posting the recording of that talk on the CSC YouTube site, which is where today's talk will be going as well, in case you end up not being able to make it live. But it doesn't hurt to register now. There are also an obscene amount, probably an overwhelming amount of books, apps, podcasts, websites that talk through the strategies we've discussed today or parenting tips in general, or that have tools that you can use to implement these various skills. I wanted to highlight a couple of them today just because it can feel really overwhelming as a parent. How do I navigate this? Daycape is a wonderful free app. It basically allows you to create visual schedules on a tablet or phone to help your child plan their day. It has image reminders. It has animated timers built into it to help them remember things. And then it also follows up. It checks in about like mood and sees how things go. And so that's a really nice, there's lots of these apps. Many of them cost $3, $5, $6. Daycape is one that I like. I've had many families who have used this and it is free, which is wonderful. There are also lots of really cool parenting podcasts. The two I have here are both by psychologists. So you're getting really good evidence-based practice. Suggestions. Good Inside is one that's done by a clinical psychologist, and she's also a mom of 3 children. Her name's Dr. Becky Kennedy. She puts out new podcasts each week, and they give various expert tips regarding things like building stronger relationships with kids, but also things relevant for transitions like handling bedtime battles, and overall things, really to help your child grow. I really like it because they're all 30 minutes or less. So you can listen to these either on your morning and evening commute to and from work, while preparing dinner, something like that. I also recently started listening to Raising Good Humans. This is done by developmental psychologist, Dr. Eliza Pressman, and she shares various evidence-based parenting practices in really easily accessible ways. For example, one of her recent podcasts earlier this week was on 10 practical ways to boost listening and cooperation in kids. She had another one that came out, it's either September or October, that talked about like how to end power struggles. And so lots of really useful advice that can be nice to listen to. And oftentimes, I know myself and people I work with find it easier to listen to podcasts or audiobooks than finding time in their day to physically read books. Finally, I just have an example of one of the great websites. This is Empowering Parents. They have a whole bunch of behavior charts. This is one of the examples for just targeting a single behavior that you can use. And you can see here that you put what thing they're targeting, what their reward is, and then they get to physically color in the pictures each time they do it. Again, you need to tailor this to your child and what's going to be reinforcing for them. If your child doesn't enjoy coloring, this probably wouldn't be a good behavior chart. But I wanted to highlight and show this as an example so that like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is a lot of free, excellent resources out there, or things that you can purchase. Again, Etsy, Amazon have a lot of these that are backed and useful tools. Finally, I just want to do one more, I guess, self-plug, but also an amazing resource for you all right now, that if you want more in-depth opportunity to practice implementing the various skills as well as other behavioral strategies with your child, and you have a child between the ages of 2 and 12 years that you have any behavioral concerns about, no need for a formal diagnosis or anything, I would encourage you to scan this QR code, or you can email the Child Study Center at gmail.com for more information. This is our support branch research study. We're currently offering it through the rest of this year, throughout the spring, winter and spring, and this provides a no cost to you clinician delivered behavior therapy as part of a step care model that's also seeking to see how effective it is to teach some of these through an interactive website before the clinician delivered therapy. All right, so just to wrap it up and highlight 4 key things to remember from today. We know transitions are hard for everyone, but establishing routines and trying to make them fun by using visuals to help support transitions and build new skills in your young child can really help reduce meltdowns and build your child's self-confidence. Related to this, trying to give your child control and autonomy by providing choices whenever possible is really helpful. And if needed, using behavior charts to help reinforce new skills or help with difficult routines and transitions can be really effective. And again, this is especially important for children with neurodevelopmental disorders like autism or ADHD, or who might have developmental delay or disability. So thank you so much for your attention so far. We have a little bit over 5 minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. I also have the link for the Child Study Center website, our email again, if you were interested in the support branch study, as well as our Twitter and Facebook information. If you don't have any questions, feel free to head out and have a wonderful rest of your week. And hope you can make some of our other CSC lunch and learns. Thank you for being here.